The train rattled through the darkness, cutting across the countryside like a silver arrow. Most passengers had settled into the quiet rhythm of the journey. Some stared out the windows, others scrolled through their phones, and a few had already fallen asleep. Traveling ticket examiner Sarah Mitchell moved through the aisle with practiced confidence. At 38, she had spent nearly a decade working on trains. She had seen every kind of passenger imaginable: angry businessmen, runaway teenagers, exhausted parents, and people carrying secrets heavier than their luggage. She was halfway through checking tickets in the first class, a coach, when she noticed something unusual. A boy. He couldn't have been older than 14. He was curled up asleep in her reserved seat near the end of the carriage. Passengers nearby were whispering, "There he is." "That's the kid. He doesn't belong here." Sarah approached slowly. The boy looked exhausted. His clothes were clean but worn. His sneakers were covered in dust. Dark circles hung beneath his eyes as if he hadn't slept in days. One elderly woman leaned toward Sarah. "He got on 3 stations ago," she whispered. "No ticket, no luggage, just sat down and passed out." Sarah nodded. Normally, railway rules were simple. No ticket meant removal at the next station. But something about the boy stopped her. He wasn't pretending. He wasn't hiding. He was simply exhausted. Sarah gently touched his shoulder. "Hey, sweetheart." The boy stirred. His eyes opened suddenly, filled with panic. For a moment, he looked like someone waking from a nightmare. Then he realized where he was. "I'm sorry," he blurted. Passengers turned to watch. Sarah knelt beside him. "What's your name?" "Ethan." "Do you have a ticket, Ethan?" The color drained from his face. He lowered his eyes. "No, ma'am." The coach grew quiet. Everyone knew what came next. At least they thought they did. Sarah studied him carefully. "Where are your parents?" The question landed like a stone. Ethan's lips trembled. He didn't answer. Instead, he looked toward the window. That silence told Sarah more than words ever could. Years earlier, she had worked with youth shelters before joining the railway. She recognized fear when she saw it, and this boy was terrified. The train continued through the night. Sarah made a decision. "Come with me." Passengers exchanged glances. Some expected security. Others expected an argument. Instead, Sarah led him to the staff compartment. She handed him a bottle of water. He drank it in seconds. Then she gave him a sandwich from her own lunch bag. The boy hesitated. "When did you last eat?" His eyes filled with tears. "Yesterday." Sarah's heart sank. He devoured the sandwich, not like someone enjoying a meal, like someone surviving. After several minutes, he finally relaxed enough to speak. "My mom died 6 months ago." Sarah listened quietly. "My dad left years before that." His voice cracked. "I was staying with my uncle." "What happened?" Ethan stared at the floor. "He drinks." The room felt colder. "He said I was a burden." Sarah remained silent. "He told me to leave." The words barely escaped his mouth. Then came the sentence that changed everything. "I don't think anybody wants me anymore." Sarah felt her chest tighten. For a moment, she wasn't a railway employee. She wasn't a ticket examiner. She was simply a human being hearing the heartbreak of another. "Nobody wants me anymore." How could a child carry those words? Outside, rain began tapping against the train windows. Sarah thought about her own life. 5 years earlier, she had lost her husband to cancer. Since then, loneliness had become a familiar companion. She knew what abandonment felt like. Not exactly the same, but close enough. The train approached the next major station. Protocol required her to contact authorities. She picked up the phone, then paused. Something felt wrong. Not about calling for help, about doing only that. Because Ethan wasn't just another case. He was a child standing at the edge of disappearing, and nobody seemed to be looking. Sarah called local child services. Within minutes, they confirmed something shocking. Ethan wasn't listed as missing. No report, no search request, no emergency alert, nothing. Nobody had reported him gone. Sarah stared at the phone in disbelief. The realization hit harder than she expected. The boy wasn't running from home. He had been forgotten by it. Hours later, the train arrived at the station. Child services workers met them on the platform. Ethan looked terrified again. Sarah knelt beside him. "They're here to help." He nodded weakly. Then he surprised her. "Will I ever see you again?" The question pierced her heart. Sarah smiled gently. "I think so." She wasn't sure why she said it. Maybe because she couldn't bear to say goodbye. Maybe because something inside her already knew. Weeks passed, but Ethan never left her thoughts. She wondered where he was, whether he felt safe, whether he still believed nobody wanted him. Then one afternoon her phone rang. It was a social worker. "Ethan asked about you." Sarah felt an unexpected warmth. The social worker explained that Ethan had been placed in temporary foster care, but adjustment wasn't easy. He barely spoke, barely smiled, until he mentioned the woman from the train. Sarah, the one who gave him a sandwich, the one who listened, the one person who treated him like he mattered. Months passed. Visits became regular. Regular visits became friendship. Friendship became something deeper, a bond neither of them expected. For the first time since losing her husband, Sarah felt purpose returning to her life. And for the first time since losing his mother, Ethan felt safe. Nearly a year later, Sarah stood nervously in a courtroom. Her hands trembled. The judge smiled warmly. "Miss Mitchell, are you prepared to assume legal guardianship of Ethan Reynolds?" Tears filled her eyes. "Yes, Your Honor." Across the room, Ethan couldn't stop smiling. The paperwork was signed. The decision was official. For the first time in a long time, neither of them was alone. As they exited the courthouse, reporters weren't waiting. There were no cameras, no headlines, just a woman and a boy walking into the sunlight. Halfway down the steps, Ethan stopped. "Sarah?" She turned. "Yeah?" His eyes glistened. He looked older now, stronger. Hope had replaced fear. Then he whispered the words that would stay with her forever. "You were the first person who looked at me and didn't see a problem." Sarah felt tears stream down her face. "What did you see?" he asked softly. She smiled. "I saw a kid worth fighting for." For several seconds neither spoke. Then Ethan wrapped his arms around her, and for the first time since boarding that train, he truly felt at home. Sometimes the biggest moments in life don't happen because of grand plans. Sometimes they begin with a tired child falling asleep in the wrong seat, a seat that by every rule he never should have occupied. Yet if he hadn't sat there that night, Sarah might never have found him. And Ethan might never have discovered that family isn't always the people you're born to. Sometimes it's the people who choose you when everyone else walks away. As the two of them disappeared into the crowd, the memory of that train journey remained, not as a story about a ticketless passenger, but as a story about kindness. Because one act of compassion can change a life, and sometimes it can save one. Did you like this feature?